We're moving very quickly into our first panel discussion this morning, about 5 minutes away from noon, and it's very befitting to welcome the moderator for this particular session. It's fair to say that he was born for this. He is the presenter, the host of the Diary of a CMO, which is a podcast that plays to the world's best, brightest marketing leaders, as well as industry leaders across related media, tech, and creative industries. As you well know, the theme is about navigating the what? Navigating the, I might give a prize, or navigating the, there's no prize, don't worry. Please do make welcome on stage Eyitayo Olayemi. A round of applause as he makes his way.
Good morning, everyone. It's a real privilege, honor to be here this morning. My name is Eyitayo Olayemi, as has been introduced. I am the host of the Diary of a CMO. It's marketing leaders, CMOs, business leaders across the continent of Africa, where we have meaningful conversations that can drive real economic impact. I've had the pleasure of hosting Mr. Lankwe. Thank you very much for joining on the pod. Mr. Lanre, thank you very much for joining on the pod. Real opportunity, real pleasure to be here. So I'm going to very quickly introduce the amazing women that would be joining me on the podcast today. And I will tell you why, at some point, why we went for an all-women cast. If you don't like it, deal with it. Anyway, I will very quickly introduce my first panelist. You know how you prepare for these things. By the way, I have a... Oh, okay. Okay. I know their names, actually. Okay, I'll introduce very quickly the head of marketing West Africa, Mondelez International, the beautiful, amazing Morolake Emopai. I hope I got that right. I was coming to just help you up. Okay, all right, no worries. Please is here. That's fine. I'd also very quickly introduce, to join us as well, another amazing woman in the industry, Kemi Longe. Kemi is the portfolio director, South, Central, and West Africa for Diageo. Please keep clapping for her. Thank you very much, Kemi. Thank you so much. I wanted to cue a sound effect, but the guys in production, no, let's not get into it, Oscar. Anyway, so, and finally, I would introduce Dr. Tola Bamigbaye Elatuyi. She is the chair, board advisory for Meristem, Nigeria. Brand advisory, Meristem Nigeria. Thank you very much for joining us, ma. DJ is not in this. There's some.
DJ, can we DJ in, please?
No.
Shift the table.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. We're pressed for time, so we'll just dive straight into it. I had a whole profile written for the three of you. I couldn't get through it. I mean, I would have washed you, like they say. But very quickly, I feel like I should give each one of you a hug. I would explain, because if there's anybody who has felt the heat of some of the things that the CEO of NESG just talked about, it would be you, beautiful ladies. So, how are you? How are you doing? I feel like, you know, when we say on social, like if you see a firstborn child, just put 1K in her hand, you know. If you see any CMO now, just After I give them a hug, just take something, How are you? How are you doing? How have you guys been navigating all of these real challenges?
I go first? Okay.
Please do.
Good morning, everyone. It's the afternoon yet. Okay, right on the afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Standing on all existing protocol. My name is Kemi Longe. How am I? I'd like to say fine.
Okay.
But if I'll be a little more sincere, I'll say it's been both a challenging and rewarding year.
Okay.
And a mix of both. It's always very interesting. There's been quite a lot of talk about the Nigerian economy, all of the improvements that are happening on the macro, but it's not coming down to the firms and the households. And because ultimately we serve consumers, and the households are what encapsulates the consumers, they struggle to then either pay for what we offer or the brands that we put out there as marketing people. So on that front, it's been a challenging year, but it's been quite rewarding because then you then get very innovative. And when you see those innovative things coming to life and moving the needle, you're like, okay, it gives you the chance to think differently in a challenging situation. So yes, I'm fine, but it's been challenging and rewarding.
Interesting. I'm glad to hear that you're fine. I'm glad to hear you're fine. Dr. Tayo talked about some of the things that businesses are doing now, product innovation, cost optimization, all of these interesting things to sort of weather this season that we are in as a country, as a market. Let me take from Doctor. How are you? How have you been? How are you holding up? Can we?
Thank you. I think you can hear me. It's good. Yes. So good afternoon, everyone, and how am I doing? I'm holding on real good. It's been amazing being here, listening to all the conversations, and I think it's also a privilege to be sitting here sharing the experiences that we have, because the room is full of multi-talented, multi-skilled people. So it's such a privilege to be here. Now, how do I really feel is the fact that sometimes it's a struggle when you have to keep up with what's happening around you. As a marketing person, the constant challenge to always be ahead of the consumer, be in tune, be in line. How does this affect us? How does this new change? What does it mean for me? And what does it mean for the consumer? Even for the processes in which we go through, how does it really change the perspective? Does my consumer still see me in the way that I expect that they should see me? Because things are happening around them, things are changing. I need to ensure that the purposefulness is still there. So I think that's what has kept me awake a lot.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then, Morolake.
Hi, everybody. My name is Morolake. Glad to be here. And I think I'm honored to sit with one of the most brightest minds, female minds, simply because I'm an inclusivity champion. But I think, how do I feel? The word is we all need to breathe, right? And manufacturers are trying to breathe. But I think also, like one of my leaders told me, it's easy to lead in good times, but the true test of your leadership, right, and your values are actually in times of crisis. So Nigeria is in a crisis, economics are in a crisis, the manufacturing sector is in a crisis. So it is forcing leaders like myself to think a bit differently, to how we redevelop business models. Number two, how we reach our consumers, but also very dear to my heart, how we continue to inspire the teams and the amazing people that keep us afloat, right. How we continue to inspire them to keep working every day, right? So I think that's it. I think it's a different paradigm to leadership that is required in a season such as this. Yeah.
Interesting. I completely agree with you. I'm going to stay with you for a second real quick. And this is regarding, again, in the light of the season that we're in, how it has become more important for brands specifically, because you amazing ladies in your primary capacity represent specific brands. I think when those times where brands like never before now have to be sort of purpose-led, it's now important to be meaningful beyond the jingles and the, all of those materials. How can brands today be more purpose-led?
So I'm going to quote one of the inspiring women in my career experiences. She's emphasized to a couple of myself and other marketing professionals about the fact that marketing is both an art and a science, right? The art of marketing is where we have amazing advertisers, the doyens and the captains of the industry here. It's also a science because there is a process, to it. But I think there's a third lens that I'd like to look at, the fact that marketing also has a heart, right? So when we think about brand purpose, a lot of times it is esoteric, right, in terms of the intangibility of it. But what I keep on emphasizing to a lot of the amazing people that I work with, both within and with my extended teams, is that purpose is not just your reason to be in terms of your existence. Right. It's also your motivating force to do, right? And it guides a set of choices. Right. So for me, as a marketer, more importantly than now, almost all organizations and brands need a social mission. A lot of the economic indices that Dr. Aduloju very quite astutely put out, speaks to a larger terrain in the minds of Nigerians. If you open social media, if you talk to an average Gen Z, 18 to 24-year-old, there's this burdening sense of hopelessness, despair, and a lack of clarity in what the future is. And I always say, number one, as a corporate organization, your purpose is a strategic imperative beyond just your 4 to 5 year plans, right? Actually crafting it into your mission, your values, and what will guide where to play and how to win as an organization is critical. 2, the brands themselves. Our brands, for me, what I practice, what I believe, a guiding career mantra for me, is that my brands are both tools to generate corporate wealth, definitely, NR, ensure my gross margins are healthy, keep an eye on the bottom line. The brands are the tools, the products are the drivers. But more importantly as well, brands are powerful tools for social reform and social mission marketing. Absolutely. I think that same professor of mine also spoke to the new paradigms in marketing when we talk about societal marketing. Right. So I'd ask a lot of advertisers, either from the agency teams or the client teams, to gauge honestly the assessment of the social impacts that their brands and their campaigns are driving. Right. We speak in different lenses now as we assess organizations. We talk about the triple bottom line, the ESG. We talk about for people, we talk about for planet, we talk about for profits. Right. And I think the second part of the question is, how then do we create tangible strides in making our brands more purposeful? I've spoken about incorporating it in your corporate strategy. 2, as you design your brand fundamentals, right, you need to build it into your architecture. A lot of us have different things. We call it the brand DNA. We talk about the brand platforms, right? What is your social mission? Some brands under my portfolio say we help the world breathe better. I've seen other people say for the good of mankind. I've seen for beauty, a lot of social leaning. So we need to check as we craft our messaging, how socially purposeful are a lot of our pillars. Number 2, as you build your activation platforms, right, and your campaigns, it is also important to dedicate some distinct pillars to actually drive social purposes. And I've seen amazing brands do it, even from competition, Promasidol and the Cowbellpedia, TomTom and the Breathe Academy. I've also seen amazing platforms from Nestle, for example. And I think as we drive awareness, as we drive consideration, as we move consumers through the experience funnel, I think it's also important that we're leaving a piece of our hearts, a piece of hope, a piece of inspiration, in those consumers. For every naira giving, some hope, some inspiration, and some thinking that someday it will all be all right.
Interesting. Thank you very much. That's a masterclass when it comes to purpose-led marketing. Quick question. Yes. This professor you keep referring to, is that professor somewhere in this room?
I think she's somewhere on this.
I'm just
somewhere
curious.
around. I'm quite curious.
Yeah, I think I can feel it.
Dr. Latu is actually, she's actually an academician as a practitioner, and I dare say I'm honored to be on the same stage as herself.
A big round of applause for the doctor, please. So, Dr. Tola, real quick, I could see that you were itching to speak on this, conversation about brands and purpose.
Yes, thank you, Morolake. I really do appreciate that. I think from the point of view, you know, you've given a lot of insight into that. I just want to add that when we say what our brand will do, what does it really mean to the consumer when we say we leave the brand essence? You know, let's take the example of maybe a malaria initiative. I produce a product that helps you to kill the mosquitoes. But when I come behind the malaria initiative of, you know, what causes malaria, how can we reduce or eliminate the malaria subject itself?
Yeah.
Then you are driving your marketing from a purpose-led point of view, because you have not only sold to me what can stop the how do we call it?
The illness.
Yes. But you have created something to stop the illness from happening.
Right.
Meaning the purpose of the product itself. That doesn't mean your product is going to stop selling. But from the consumer point of view, I feel that you care. She talked about the soul. That is when your brand really then does have a soul. That is when you care about me. That is when I feel that you are concerned about the causes of malaria itself. That won't stop me from buying the product. It just shows that you are in the forefront fighting the malaria issue itself. Then you are advocating, you are conscious, you know, and I mean,
yeah, we
I
get it.
think Morolake has done a good job.
No problem, doctor. I know that if we allow you now, you will just start throwing down here. By the way, she's got a PhD. She's got a PhD in marketing. Amazing. Kemi, don't worry now. I was coming to you. Yeah. So tell us. I see that you do, and again, I wanted to make sure that the conversations we had on this stage today were conversations that were meaningful. It's not so much about what is the marketing strategy. No, we're not here to discuss that. Still on this conversation about purpose, one of the things I think about is I see that you do some mentoring within the industry. There's a lot of young people who you get the opportunity to speak with and lead. How would you say that representation, specifically now, is in the industry? There's a bigger conversation about representation, whether in public service at the highest level and so on and so forth. How do you think we're doing as an industry?
Thank you for that question. So yes, I take a good part of my time to try to mentor. I'm quite careful with the word mentor, but coach people in terms of not just in marketing, but in just personal growth and clarity. And if you remember something that Morolake said, if you speak to some people at a certain age group, right, there's quite a feeling of despair and hopelessness. And sometimes the higher you have gone in your career, the more it looks like you're immune to that hopelessness and despair. So in terms of representation, I think clearly across industries, there's quite a gap, right? However, I think if you look across organizations, there are very many women networks, there are networks for people that live with disabilities and all of that. So there are efforts everywhere for it to happen. I think the imperative is on people who are ahead as leaders and to also put in their quota into just picking one person, two people, or a platform to say, hey, this is how I want to give clarity back to people who don't have it. Right. This is how I want to help people who maybe look up to me. And sometimes you need to help them understand that even you don't have it figured out. Right. And just that conversation of, look, like I tell people that I coach, we are all just stop putting yourself under too much pressure. It's okay to have a plan. Right. So yes, there's underrepresentation, but for everybody in the room who has, and if it's 2 years, then you can speak to someone that has done 3 months. Right. It doesn't have to be 20 years. Right. And of course, for the people who have privilege of 20, 35 years, I think the imperative is upon us to give back and just coach, mentor, help, Just one person, you don't have to do 50.
Yeah.
Just help one person get more clarity with their journey.
Interesting. And we don't have to go too far to see an example here on stage, right? You know, there's an example
Absolutely.
right in the front of everybody. I wanted to talk to Dr. Tola now. In terms of the CMO role, how much do you think that role has evolved over time, especially in the area of driving real business results? How much do you think that role has evolved?
So thank you. And if I say I wasn't expecting that question, I'll be lying. So from my point of view, and you know, everybody here is an expert. I will say that if you look traditionally across how the CMO role itself has evolved, we're talking about traditional media, you didn't have a lot of data, you know, we did things based on what we saw, maybe our insight. But in today's world, there's so much data available that, you know, the succinctness, the level of precision that you practically will have today has enabled CMO to become better at doing their jobs. You practically can determine the foresight, you can determine the growth of an organization. As a CMO, you have that much power to say, this is how this business will grow in the next 2-3 years, this is where growth will come from, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. Why? Because you are now dealing with a lot of data. Analytics are there, you have a better understanding of the consumers that you're dealing with. Now, in today's world, I don't think anybody will say, I do not understand my consumer. In fact, the data you have, you're struggling with the data to catch up with that data.
Right.
You're practically struggling to catch up with that data. And if you're not careful, your consumers are going to leave you behind. Because your consumers are going to leave you behind. So I will say that even up to the research bit, as basic as you want to shoot a campaign, maybe even a TVC, today, you don't have to wait for a link test where you have to call so many people. AI can generate the expressions for you. So you can actually get the results of your link test in about 1 hour. Before you would like call maybe a focus group, play the ad, do cards, cardboards, show expressions. Today, the role has evolved so much that in every aspect of the marketing role, even to your cross-functional teams,
Right.
there's so much involvement, it's so much better, and you have that much level of clarity into what you're doing. So more for me is the level of insights which you have to become a better manager for your brand, give better input into the decision making for the growth of the organization, and become a better marketer yourself in the fact that you have understanding into the impact of your campaigns, how it affects the consumer, where it is going, because now you know that you can now track better the KPIs. We used to have very broad KPIs, and in today's world, you can literally break those KPIs down into the minutest detail of what is the impact or what is the effect. Now you can do that.
Interesting. Thank you very much. The point you made about AI, which I do know that there's a session later on in the day, I think it was Dr. Emmanuel Agu, one of my fathers in the industry. And I'm sure that that's the session everyone is looking forward to. Kemi, what's your take on this evolution of the CMO role?
So I'll say the CMO role has moved from just being someone who communicates the brand message, which was what it was, to someone who creates consumer experiences. The second thing I would say, it has moved from just, you're just sitting down there responsible for the advertising, the brands, to being someone who actually drives business growth. So you see a lot of CMOs also manage functions like revenue growth management, because your brands have to drive in growth. That's the lifeblood of the business. So it's not necessarily about advertising. So you see marketing people now having to do courses like finance for non-finance, because you need to understand that your brand has a P&L. So it's moved from just being that person who does advertising or leads advertising or just puts a brand message out there, into someone who drives business growth and charts the course of the company's vision.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I've just been told, let's please sending your questions. I hope, please can you put on the QR code so that we can start getting into those questions and we can get into them as quickly as possible.
Yeah, so what we want to do is, the essence of this conference, as we all know, is to get as much information and engagement. So we want to crave your indulgence in the audience and those at home to please scan this and also throw in your questions so we can make the maximum use of our panelists. Can we have the code? Yes. So you have that, and you have a section in the app, that's the Slido app, so you can actually send in your questions so we can go through it and push it out there. Please, we need your engagement, we need your questions. A lot of topics that we can touch on, especially when you have the CMOs on stage. We're looking at the opportunities for those of us who are practitioners or those who are clients. So let's get those very difficult questions asked so we can get a very engaging conference. Thank you.
All right. Moraka, you wanted to say a few words?
So I think, just like Kemi said, one of the greatest insights in the shifts, in this particular role is the fact that you're no longer just responsible for customer or consumer acquisition and retention, right? You're now being tasked with the role of being a business integrator, influencing business decisions, right? I think the role of strategy is very critical because on that particular seat, you're tasked with shaping the future and the direction of growth for the business. Then marketing was largely responsible for driving awareness campaigns. But I think part of the things that Dr. Elatsui alluded to is the fact of proving, or the need to prove, immediate and tangible results on investments. And I don't know if I have any of my commercial or sales colleagues here, proving almost instantaneously how your activities are driving immediate sales. So I think more importantly than so, as a CMO, you are actually the heart of business management. And it's so beautiful to see a lot of us cross into more commercial roles, leading the organization itself. Marketing itself is the start of the business value chain.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Morolake. I'm going to stay on you real quick. I have a question here regarding regulation. What would you say? Why are you chuckling? Don't worry, it's a safe space. It's a safe space, right? Mr. Chairman, sir?
I hope so.
It's a safe space. So what are the challenges? What are the challenges you currently have? The essence of this forum is to be able to have those conversations. So tell us, what are some of the challenges you're having when it comes to regulations?
So I'd like to say that I'm pro-regulation.
Fantastic.
Although we could get some easier passes to make our lives easier, right?
Okay.
Or make our lives more efficient.
Okay.
But I think some of the experiences that you would see, even from Dr. Aduloju's presentation, is that the manufacturing industry, and I speak for the FMCG sector, I know that my colleagues in tech and services have been smiling home to the bank in the past 1 year. But in particular, we are down in terms of our contribution to GDP by over 28%. That means that our business models currently are pressured, and some of the trends that we have identified is the fact that the regulatory environment itself is becoming a bit more stiff. And it's not limited to just advertising and communications, particularly for business models like some that I have operated in that are largely over 70% imports generated or imports driven. We have faced a lot of shifts and a lot of pressures to our operating model, simply from changing import regulations, tariffs, and the duplicity in the processes, right? So, and I think for advertising, I have sat under ARCON trainings, and I know that definitely regulations are there to protect the interest of the consumer and also sanitize the advertising space. But generally, as marketers, it does place you in a box in terms of how extensively you can make product claims. We've also faced incidences, especially with product registration, and that would affect product diversification and innovation in terms of frequent changes and at times limitations in the lead times that it actually takes for us to respond. For any innovation practitioner here, and I've been privileged to launch close to over 20 food products, one of the most impactful, one of the current realities of product development is that it takes you roughly about 12 to 18 months to develop a product that will succeed. And in those 12 to 18 months, you actually have an additional 2 years to actually nurture the mix to stand. And when the dynamics change within the funnel, then you are placed with complexities on how to consistently evolve the product. Remember that every product first starts with an idea, and it starts with a promise that a promise to solve a consumer need. But then you then take that idea into product benefits, product ingredients, sorry, please, let's not have an innovation class or
Okay.
9-10 class here. So I think helping us make some of these environments a bit more clear and a bit more supportive would be critical. I think the final point I'd like to call out is the overlap of functions, duplicity of efforts. I do know that every government parastatal and regulator has its creed, has its ethos, and has its purpose. But I think for manufacturers, the ability to streamline some of these functions, would make it easier or make it more efficient for operations. For the opportunities, I know Dr. Aduloju spoke to creating or accelerating some of our trade-free treaties.
Right.
Manufacturers like ourselves are looking forward to the acceleration of AFTA. I understand that it's in phase 3. Some of our colleagues in other markets outside Nigeria are benefiting from that immediately. We're hoping that the import authorities can also look into streamlining some of their processes. I think what is important for me is also how we get a supportive roadmap, especially as manufacturers, for the execution of some regulatory policies, right? I was just doing a rough deep dive of the manufacturing sector. Roughly about 767 manufacturers shut down in the past 1 year. We've seen the exit of a lot of foreign investments, especially in the manufacturing sector. We're seeing a lot of restructuring efforts that is not quite clear in terms of the future and the sustenance of the industry. And a lot of this is driven by regulations and changes in government policies. I think we also need sustainability incentives. Some manufacturers, I won't call the names, have also been benefactors of some of these incentives, but would like them to be widespread, would also like acceleration in the execution, especially for operators that are investing in local sustainability of some of our agricultural food chains, like cocoa.
Right.
I'm not sure how many of us know that the cocoa food chain is in crisis at the moment, right? And it does have an effect on the passed down prices to our amazing consumers, right? I know that there are conversations and there are dialogue, but we're looking forward to more proactive deliberations, so that we have enough lead time to innovate and reorganize our operations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Morolake. That was pretty exhaustive. Thank you very much. I think the main call out for me would be that as brands, we are
sorry to interrupt. We want to take some questions that have come in so we can get as many in. Please, can we have the multimedia screen?
Okay.
And if it's not directed to any of the panelists, anyone can take a shot at the question. So let's have the question. Once again, don't forget to scan the app and ensure that you send in your questions so we can have a very interactive session.
Are we taking the question now?
Yeah, I'll read it out. So, first question, beyond capacity, kindly list some of the things you look out. Okay, let me just take this one. Can the ladies please, beyond capacity, kindly list some of the things you look out for before. Okay, now they're just messing with me.
Okay.
One second. Okay, let's just take this one. The questions are coming in, so let's take this one.
Okay.
Can the ladies please give us examples of how you're using technology and culture to drive changes in your roles as CMO? I also want to crave the indulgence of our panelists to make the responses very brief so we can take as many questions and responses as possible. Any of the panelists can take this. Thank you.
The role of technology in driving culture. Okay, let me start, right? So I think technology is forcing a lot of us...
Sorry, Morolake, I apologize. Dr. Tola, would you mind taking the point on culture, please?
Culture. Okay,
yes, awesome. And then we'll come to Morolake.
Let me do a quick one on culture. So when you look at the content that we consume every day, I'm sure that when we see something that resonates with us, something that looks like us, something that resembles what we do, something that embodies our values, our opinion, there's an affinity that we build towards that brand. That is exactly how culture is to brands. Because you want to study the nuances, the language, the look, the feel. All of that is what is embodied in how we infuse culture into the conversations that we hold, into the campaigns that you see, into the content that you consume every day. And when we are able to relate or entrench our brands, because culture is a new marketing spend. That's what we're all spending right now, culture. How do we entrench culture? How do we make the consumer feel like we are with you? We recognize you, we acknowledge you, and we want to infuse your values, your ethics, your nuances, your language into the things that we do. So that's how we infuse culture into the conversations that we have, and it builds affinity. One of the things it does is builds affinity. And if you notice, a lot of brands are going that route today. Even a national brand you see, there's some level of conversation that happens within the culture that, let's take the beers, for example. The beers have done a really good job in that space. The beers have done a good job, not because you won't find the beer anywhere else, but when you look to the south, it speaks to the culture of the people, it speaks to the environment, and they're like, we are for you. When you go to the east, there's another brand that is made specifically for them. And that drives growth, yeah? That drives the affinity towards the brand, and that drives the acceptability of the brand.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Kemi, would you take on the tech question and how that has affected how you approach marketing?
Right. The question is around how AI has affected how we approach brand management. So what that AI does, and because I think we're still learning it, and it will still continue to grow. I'm just taking you if I say about 18 months, 24 months back, I was almost like, no, this thing is just a fluke, it's not going to happen. So one of the first things I'd advise everybody to do, and for the person that asked in brand management, you have to embrace that it's a real thing. The second thing is, I was somewhere and someone said that your job is not going to be taken by AI. Your job is going to be taken by the person who learns how to use it properly.
Right.
Right? So beyond brand management, you need to understand that you need to learn how to use AI. I have watched TVCs or listened to radio, and I'm like, no, ChatGPT wrote the scripts. Don't do that. I can tell. And somebody else will prompt the same ChatGPT, and I cannot sniff it.
Right.
Right? So how we've used it, and I'm not saying how I've used presently, because everybody will use differently, but my charge would be, you cannot allow it take over the place of critical thinking as a human being, as a marketeer, as a brand owner, as an advertiser. It is important that you still allow yourself do the critical thinking. I use ChatGPT a lot. I use Gemini. I use Meta AI. I use quite a lot. I heard Snapchat has AI. I'm like, okay, I'm not sure I want to go that far. But I ensure that I've done my critical thinking, because one of the things AI does for me, even without brand management, is it helps me improve my productivity. I want to have visitors in my market. I need 4 of them to go to 4 different places. I don't want their cars to clash. I don't want them to be in the same outlet. I prompt the chat, it gives me my series. I send it to the logistics person. I don't have to think. So ensure that whatever you're using your AI for in your brand management, you do not remove the place of your critical thinking. Because I always tell people, when we get into our PowerPoint mode, I said, you're dealing with human beings at the other end of things.
Right.
You're not dealing with numbers.
Right.
It's easy to say, so we're going to reach 15 million consumers. You know what we say in the meeting rooms, right? We're going to reach 15 million consumers, and you put people down to numbers, and you try to start to treat them like machines. Let's not make, AI is supposed to support, help us make our work better, improve our productivity, help us bring together that critical thinking that you innately have as a human.
Right.
So bring that critical thinking, all of the great stuff you have as a human, and merge it with what technology has to offer with the advent of AI.
All right, thank you. That's all we have for now, yeah?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pete.
To our panelists and, of course, our moderator, Eitai Olaimi, did a great job there. A quick photo up before we move on. Like I mentioned, we are pressed for time. A couple of our speakers, panelists, who have flights as well to take. I think there's more. How many people came from Lagos or outside Abuja? Just signify. I want to pay for your tickets, courtesy airpiece. How many? So, how many of you? You people are doubting me because I'm holding microphone. Do you know who I am? I don't even know who I am. I'm still trying to figure it out. Once again, thank you very much to our panelists. A round of applause as they make their way off stage.